You're watching the Denis Times Illustrated, volume number 44. Let's go ahead and get started with our top story here. Who are Scarlet Meadows bandits? Gertrude Bimbach was knitting a hat for her niece when the train lurched to a stop and shouting commenced. "I feared for my life," she said. Passengers were subjected to a terrifying ordeal as the train was robbed near the Lemoyne border. Outlaws used an oil wagon on the tracks to cause the train to come to a stop. They then threatened the passengers to give up their belongings. It was then that lawmen, having been tipped off to the robbery, arrived on the scene and confronted the outlaws. Sheriff Tompkins was one of those lawmen who arrived on the scene. There is very little to tell. We are searching for evidence at this time. The passengers are in great distress. The supply cars have been looted. Men are dead. This region's problems with lawlessness have returned. Reports indicate the outlaws escaped after having engaged in a furious gun battle with the lawmen. Murderer on loose. Sean McGuire, a member of the notorious Dutch Van der Linde's gang, has escaped from custody. McGuire was captured and in the process of being transported from Blackwater to a federal prison in the West. He is part of Van der Linde's gang who were responsible for the recent Blackwater boat robbery that left many dead. The shootout was fierce and several men were killed as a result. Bounty hunters had caught McGuire, but were ambushed on a stretch of the upper Montana River by Confederates of the accused. Upon relating to the circumstances of the escape, one lawman on the scene said that McGuire repeatedly expressed the idea of jail as no terror to him, nor the idea of death by hangman's noose. McGuire once suggested to a sheriff that his rope wasn't stout enough and may break under his weight. Officials have called for action, saying the escape is yet another example of the inability of the police to keep criminals incarcerated. Albright captured. Snake oil salesman poisoned many. When Fanny Crenshaw suffered from rheumatism, she looked to Benedict Albright to ease her suffering. He told her that the fatty steak of flesh around the vertebrae of reptiles would cure any case of rheumatic issue. Showing her a long list of certificates from happy patients he had cured, she borrowed money from the bank and purchased several bottles. Miss Crenshaw is now one of many people who have been poisoned by Albright's so-called miracle cures. Tales have poured in after each town he visited, with purchasers feeling sickly and usually far worse than their original condition they sought to cure. Albright was finally captured and brought into the office of Valentine's sheriff by a bounty hunter who is rumored to be a family member or friend of someone poisoned by Albright's hideous concoctions. Mexican desperados bring terror. Some of the most desperate bandits in the region are imposing a reign of terror on the Grizzlies and surrounding country. Led by famous gunslinger, outlaw, and robber Flaco Hernandez, a gang of thieves has raided numerous local towns, including Strawberry and Valentine. In one daring but ultimately fruitless train robbery, the safe and strong boxes were blown to atoms. Frightened passengers were held hostage, though not mercifully molested. Reverend Unis Garand has called for the expulsion of what he calls all men of Mexican ancestry as they bring villainy and wanton crime to our great country. Death lurks in the dust as Scarlet Fever rages in Armadillo. Scarlet Fever exists in this town to the extent that has never been seen before, believed to be due to bad sanitation, though one health official claims it is exacerbated by the high winds and dust storms plaguing the county. The spread of zymotic diseases has raised great fears. Many households are under quarantine and those who can are fleeing in droves. Sanitary conditions in the town are deplorable and the mortality rate is so high that residents have taken to burning bodies. Between the dust storms, killing crops and causing starvation, and the scarlet fever epidemic, some say Armadillo feels like a cursed town. Travelers are advised to avoid the area. Black Widow captured. Eliane Swann charmed many a man with her silver tongue and handsome figure, but those who courted her were rewarded with a kiss of death. Wanted for the deaths of several men, including her husband, Swann became known as the Black Widow. While it isn't known what caused her to turn on her suitors, it is known that her spree of killing has come to an end. Miss Swann was turned over to authorities and is currently awaiting trial in the Valentine jail. Still protesting her innocence at the time of capture, she was luring another unsuspecting suitor into her web. Our final story: cigarette cards give fame to murderers. New edition from Falcon Claw draws protest. For many a year, man and boy alike have delighted in all manner of collectible cards, including pouches, packets, and tins of tobacco. But a new set from Falcon Claw Tobacco that celebrates famous gunslingers and outlaws has drawn the ire of Puritan groups. The cards honor gunslingers such as Black Bell, Jim Boy Calloway, and even Emmett Granger, a known sadistic killer who has in recent years turned to hog fancying. The Butcher brothers, who ran afoul of legendary gunslinger Landon Ricketts, are also featured. Mexican desperado Flaco Hernandez graces one card. Miss Haiti Beardsley of the Anti-Cigarette League was quoted as saying, "When the likes of Frank Heck, the Otis Miller boys, or the coward Billy Midnight, who shot many a man in the back, are celebrated in this way, it spreads the contaminating influences and effects of the cigarette habit," unquote. Stores report that the tobacco has been selling well. And this is going to wrap up our edition of the St. Denis Times Illustrated, volume number 44. I would like to thank you for watching and wish you good luck in your play.